Emma Grede told the world Meghan Markle is a last-minute addition. She was not invited.
Emma Grede filmed herself switching name tags at her own gala, posted it to Instagram stories, and in doing so told the entire world exactly what Meghan Markle is now reduced to, a woman who has to beg her way into events that most people had never even heard of until she showed up uninvited. The footage is brief but devastating. There is Emma, the founder of the 15% Pledge, physically rearranging place cards at the last possible moment, making room for a guest who was clearly not on the original list. She wanted us to see it. She made sure we would know. And the question that should be keeping Meghan awake at night is simple. Why would the host of an event celebrating Black empowerment deliberately expose the Duchess of Sussex as a gatecrasher? This was not a Met Gala. This was not the Oscars. The 15% Pledge Gala has existed for 6 years now, quietly supporting Black-owned businesses, doing actual work in the community. Most Americans could not have named it before last weekend. The organization only became headline news because Meghan Markle muscled her way through the door, and suddenly every outlet in the country wanted to talk about her pink dress instead of the cause the event was supposedly honoring. The timing alone tells a story that the mainstream press seems determined to ignore. Meghan's name has surfaced in recently released Epstein documents. A photograph exists of her on a yacht in August of 2016 with Karina Shuliak, one of Jeffrey Epstein's known associates, taken just weeks before Meghan claims she met Harry in Botswana. The royal family faced Epstein-related questions all weekend, and somehow, miraculously, Meghan managed to secure a last-minute invitation to an event that would generate enough pink dress coverage to bury anything more uncomfortable. Someone wanted a distraction. Someone got one. The only question is who made the call, and what exactly are they trying to hide?
Literally begging to be allowed into a D-list event because, let's face it, guys, there were no A-listers, and then she wears that ridiculous dress.
The dress that Meghan wore to this hastily arranged appearance tells its own story, one of desperation and last-minute scrambling that no amount of favorable press coverage can disguise. Charles Harbison designed it, or rather, Charles Harbison loaned it, because the evidence captured by photographers that night makes one thing abundantly clear. This gown was never custom-made for Meghan Markle's body. Look at the hem. The fabric was not cut, it was folded. You can see the creasing, the uneven gathering of material around her feet, the way the dress pools awkwardly where a proper fitting would have created a clean line. When designers create custom pieces for high-profile clients, they spend weeks on measurements, fittings, adjustments. They study the client's proportions. They understand how fabric falls on that specific body. None of that happened here. The horizontal cut at the torso was perhaps the most baffling choice. Meghan has what fashion professionals delicately describe as a short trunk, wide shoulders, and minimal waist definition. A horizontal line across the midsection is quite literally the worst possible design element for her proportions. It shortens what is already short. It widens what does not need widening. Any designer who had actually studied her body would know this instantly. Compare this disaster to the beige dress she wore to King Charles's garden party when she was still a working royal. That gown featured an inverted cut, a design that created the illusion of a longer waist and gave her figure some definition. Someone who understood her body made that dress. Someone who was paying attention. The pink monstrosity at the 15% Pledge Gala was the work of someone who either did not have time to care or simply did not bother. The sweetheart neckline compounded every existing problem. That style works beautifully on women with curves to fill it. On Meghan, it created an expansive flat chest that only emphasized the width of her shoulders. The whole effect was of a woman wearing borrowed clothes, which of course she was. Fashion insiders have confirmed that this was a loan piece, pulled at the last possible moment when Meghan's attendance was suddenly greenlit. The wrinkles told their own tale. Custom gowns arrive pressed, steamed, handled with obsessive care by teams who understand that a single crease can ruin a photograph. Meghan's dress looked like it had been yanked from a garment bag in a moving vehicle. Bunched fabric around the waist, visible pulling at the seams. The construction of someone who knew this would never be their problem again after tonight. Charles Harbison dressed a duchess, and he dressed her like someone he never expected to see again.
Emma Grede was unhappy with the way Meghan decided to manhandle her while on the red carpet. She pulled away. That was revealing the night that spotted that one. And the dynamic between these two was one of competition. Utterly bizarre body language.
The detail that guests simply could not stop discussing was not the dress itself, but what appeared beneath it. Meghan's toes extending beyond the front of her open sandals, literally touching the floor with each step she took. Multiple attendees mentioned it in conversations that night. The image circulated on social media within hours. and the question everyone kept asking was the same: why does she keep doing this? Open-toed sandals with a formal gown represent a specific choice, one that almost universally cheapens even the most expensive look. Red carpet stylists understand this implicitly. When you are wearing thousands of dollars worth of fabric, you do not undermine the effect with footwear that belongs at a beach wedding. You certainly do not choose shoes that force your toes to protrude over the edge and drag across the ground. The fold at the bottom of the dress made everything worse. Because the hem had been hastily adjusted rather than properly cut, it created a visual line that drew the eye directly downward. Photographers shooting from low angles captured every unflattering detail: the bunched fabric, the exposed feet, the way Meghan's stride pulled the whole construction out of alignment with each step. Any competent stylist would have rejected this combination immediately. Cover the feet, protect the line of the gown. This is basic fundamental knowledge that anyone dressing celebrities for major events understands instinctively. Either Meghan does not have a stylist she trusts, or she has one whose advice she consistently ignores. Neither possibility reflects well on her judgment. The sandals themselves have become almost a signature at this point, and not in a flattering way. She wears them constantly, to events formal and casual, seemingly indifferent to how they photograph or what statement they make. Some observers have speculated about comfort. Others suggest she simply likes them and refuses to be told otherwise. What nobody can argue is that they work. They do not work. They have never worked, and she keeps wearing them anyway. Someone who cared about Meghan's public image would have said something years ago. Someone with actual authority over her wardrobe choices would have intervened. The fact that this keeps happening suggests either that no such person exists in her inner circle, or that Meghan has made it clear she will not tolerate being corrected on matters she considers personal. Based on everything we know about how she treats the people around her, the second option seems considerably more likely. The interaction between Meghan and Emma Grede on the red carpet deserves close examination because it revealed something that both women probably wished had remained private. Body language experts who reviewed the footage noted immediate tension, a power struggle playing out in real time between two women who each believed they should be controlling the moment. Emma pulled away when Meghan attempted to physically reposition her for photographs. The motion was subtle but unmistakable to anyone watching closely. Meghan's hand reached for Emma's arm, tried to guide her into a different stance, and Emma simply did not cooperate. She stepped back. She reclaimed her space. This was her event, her organization, her moment, and she was not about to be stage managed by a last-minute addition to the guest list. The active between them was competition, not friendship. Hollywood relationships are transactional by nature, and this one was no exception. Emma needed Meghan because a duchess draws cameras. Meghan needed Emma because she no longer receives invitations to events that actually matter. Each woman was using the other, and neither appeared to enjoy the arrangement particularly. People close to the situation have described their relationship as professional at best. They sat together for that cringeworthy podcast episode last year, the one where Meghan gloated about doing a baby mama dance in language that made listeners wince. Emma played along because it served her interests at the time, but genuine affection between them? Evidence suggests that does not exist. What made the red carpet moment so telling was how visibly both women were working to assert dominance. Meghan with her physical maneuvering, her attempts to control positioning and angles, Emma with her resistance, her refusal to be treated like a prop at her own event. Neither woman was willing to defer to the other. Neither was particularly good at hiding it. The footage will live forever online now, analyzed and reanalyzed by people who have learned to read Meghan's public interactions for signs of the person she becomes when cameras are not supposed to be rolling. This was not friendship on display. This was two powerful women, each convinced of her own superiority, forced into proximity by mutual self-interest, and barely managing to conceal their mutual irritation. The moment that exposed everything came when a hapless assistant tried to adjust Meghan's ill-fitting dress on the red carpet. The woman was simply doing her job, attempting to make the poorly constructed gown look presentable for photographs. What she received in return was a dismissal so cold that witnesses openly discussed it among themselves afterward. Watch the footage carefully. Meghan's jaw visibly clenches as the assistant reaches for the bunched fabric. Her hand comes down in a pat that conveys unmistakable meaning. "Get away from me." The assistant's face registers something between confusion and hurt. She had been helping. She had been doing exactly what any competent handler would do in that situation, and she had been shut down with the kind of wordless contempt that cannot be misinterpreted. Royally Sage described the look on Meghan's face as saying, "Move help" in the clearest possible terms. The assistant had overstayed her welcome by approximately 3 seconds, which is to say, she had dared to exist in Meghan's spotlight at all. For someone accustomed to being the center of attention, even brief competition with a staff member was apparently intolerable. This tracks with everything reported in Valentine Lowe's book Courtiers, which documented systematic bullying allegations against Meghan during her time as a working royal. Staff members described an environment of constant criticism, impossible demands, and explosive reactions to perceived slights. The revolving door of employees at Archewell suggests those patterns did not end when Meghan left the palace. If she acts this way on camera, surrounded by photographers who will capture every micro-expression, what happens behind closed doors? If a simple adjustment to her dress triggers visible fury in a public setting, what does genuine frustration look like when no one is watching? These are questions that Meghan's defenders never seem willing to address. The assistant that night was likely new. They usually are. People do not last long in Meghan's orbit. They arrive eager to work for a duchess, discover what that actually entails, and depart as quickly as professional courtesy allows. Some last months, some last weeks. A few have reportedly lasted days. The pattern is so consistent that it has become its own form of evidence. Anyone watching that red carpet interaction saw exactly who Meghan Markle becomes when she feels her moment is being compromised, and anyone who has worked for her would recognize it instantly. The photographers calling out that night created a moment of unintentional comedy that Meghan almost certainly did not find amusing. "Meghan, Meghan, look here, Meghan," they shouted over and over, treating her like any other celebrity working the carpet. She had given explicit instructions to be addressed as Duchess. They ignored her completely. The irony was thick enough to choke on. Here was a woman attending an event celebrating Black empowerment, demanding that photographers use her colonialist honorific, a title derived from centuries of British aristocratic tradition that her own husband's family built on the backs of colonized peoples around the world. She wants to be the champion of the marginalized and the Duchess simultaneously. She wants to reject the institution when it does not serve her and invoke its authority when it does. The photographers were not being deliberately disrespectful. They were simply treating her the way they treat everyone else who works red carpets in Los Angeles. In Hollywood, unless you are actual royalty presiding over actual functions of state, you are just another famous person hoping for coverage. Meghan's status in America is celebrity, not nobility. The photographers understood this even if she refuses to accept it. Her insistence on the title has become almost pathological at this point. Every public appearance comes with instructions about proper forms of address. Every introduction must include the honorific. She signed the 15% pledge guest book as Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, in handwriting so deliberately elegant it bordered on parody. The title is everything to her, the entire foundation of whatever claim to relevance she still possesses. Without it, she is Rachel Meghan Markle, a former actress from a basic cable legal drama that most Americans stopped watching years ago. Without it, she is a woman approaching middle age, whose career peaked before she met Harry, and whose subsequent ventures have ranged from underwhelming to catastrophic. The title is all she has left, the single thread connecting her to the fame and influence she believed marriage would permanently secure. So when photographers call her simply Meghan, when they strip away the honorific and treat her like everyone else, they are not just failing to follow protocol, they are exposing the truth she cannot bear to acknowledge. In America, in the real world outside her carefully curated bubble, the Duchess of Sussex is just another person desperate for attention. And attention, once freely given, has become increasingly difficult to command. 2 days before the gala, the 15% pledge held a family event specifically designed for participants to bring their children. Emma Grede attended with her son and daughter. Other supporters brought their families. The gathering celebrated Black-owned businesses while giving kids from the community an opportunity to connect with successful entrepreneurs who looked like them. Meghan did not bring Archie and Lilibet, the woman who never stops invoking her biracial identity, who has built entire interview segments around her experiences as a person of color, who accused the royal family of racism on international television, somehow could not find time to introduce her children to the Black community she claims to champion. The irony cuts deep enough to draw blood. People close to the event noticed her absence and discussed it extensively. Tina Knowles, Beyoncé's mother, who was being honored at the gala, was reportedly displeased that Meghan skipped the family gathering but materialized at the last minute for the main event with its cameras and red carpet. The pattern was too obvious to ignore. Meghan shows up when photographers are present. She disappears when the work requires something other than posing. Archewell, the foundation she and Harry established with such fanfare, has been documented as employing predominantly white staff. 5 years in America, constant rhetoric about racial justice, endless positioning as a voice for the marginalized, and her own organization looks nothing like the diversity she preaches. The hypocrisy is not subtle. It is simply ignored by outlets that prefer to focus on her wardrobe. Her children, by her own description, face unique challenges as biracial members of a famous family. Logic would suggest she would want them to have strong connections to Black culture, Black community, black role models beyond their grandmother Doria, who remains conspicuously absent from most of Meghan's public life. Instead, Archie and Lilibet appear to exist in a bubble as white as the Montecito neighborhood their parents chose over more diverse communities. The timing of her sudden interest in black designers raises its own questions. Why now? After half a decade in California, what suddenly made the 15% pledge Gala core? What was happening in the news cycle that made a last-minute appearance at this particular event so urgent? The question answers itself for anyone willing to look at the calendar. The connection that mainstream media refuses to examine is sitting in plain sight, documented in photographs and newly released files that should be generating serious questions but have instead been buried under wall-to-wall coverage of an ill-fitting pink dress. Meghan's name surfaced in recently released Epstein documents. The reference is brief, a mention in communications that places her within the orbit of people connected to Jeffrey Epstein during a period when she was aggressively networking in Los Angeles. By itself, it might mean nothing. People attend parties. Names appear in address books. The circles of wealthy and ambitious individuals inevitably overlap. But then there is the photograph. Meghan on a yacht in August of 2016, photographed alongside Karina Shuliak, who was known to be intimately connected to Epstein during the years of his most prolific offending. The image was taken weeks, perhaps days, before Meghan claims she first met Harry during a trip to Botswana. The timeline raises questions that no journalist seems willing to ask her directly. The mainstream media covered the 15% pledge gala extensively. Every major outlet ran stories about the pink dress. Fashion critics weighed in on the fit. Royal watchers analyzed her body language with Emma Grede. The coverage was full, saturating news feeds for the entire weekend. Meanwhile, the Epstein connection received virtually no attention from the same outlets. The gala appearance happened the same weekend the royal family faced Epstein-related questions about Prince Andrew. More documents are scheduled for release. The pressure on anyone connected to that network, even tangentially, is intensifying by the day. And somehow, miraculously, Meghan secured a last-minute invitation to an event that would dominate entertainment coverage just as uncomfortable questions about her past threatened to surface. Emma Grede was recently made an ambassador to the King's Trust, the charitable organization run by Harry's father. The appointment came after her participation in Meghan's podcast. Some observers have characterized it as a reward for services rendered, a thank you for helping rehabilitate the Sussex brand. If the palace needed a favor from Emma, if someone needed Meghan placed in front of cameras generating harmless pink dress stories, the connection was already in place. Was this coordination? Was it coincidence? The mainstream press shows no interest in finding out. They are too busy debating whether the sweetheart neckline suited her figure. The questions multiply faster than anyone seems willing to address them, and the silence from outlets that should be investigating grows more conspicuous by the day. Why has no major journalist asked Meghan directly about the yacht photograph? Why has no interviewer confronted her with the Epstein document references? She has given multiple interviews this year. She has promoted products and projects across platforms. At no point has anyone with access posed the obvious questions. More Epstein documents are scheduled for release, with sources suggesting potentially more damaging material ahead. Names that have remained hidden may emerge. Connections that seemed speculative may solidify. The story is not over, it is barely beginning. Meanwhile, Harry testified in London just days before the gala that media has made his wife's life a misery. He delivered this statement to a judge in his ongoing case against the Daily Mail, his face somber, his tone grave. He spoke of suffering, of persecution, of relentless attacks on someone he loves. Then his wife showed up at a Hollywood gala, strut down a green carpet, posed for dozens of photographers, and radiated the kind of joy that miserable people rarely manage to project. The cognitive dissonance was jarring enough to notice from across an ocean. Harry describes a woman living in torment. Meghan appears to be having the time of her life. The press remains complicit in managing narratives that serve Meghan's interests while burying anything that might damage her carefully constructed image. They publish approved photographs from her Instagram. They repeat her characterizations without challenge. They frame every story through the lens she provides, and when evidence emerges that contradicts her preferred version of events, they simply decline to cover it. The 15% pledge gala accomplished exactly what someone needed it to accomplish. It generated days of coverage about dresses and body language and feuds with assistants. It pushed the Epstein stories off front pages. It gave outlets something to discuss besides uncomfortable questions about yachts and timelines and associations that demand explanation. But the documents are not going away. The photographs are not going away. The questions will eventually require answers from someone who has spent years evading accountability. The narrative management can only work for so long before reality forces its way through. Meghan Markle gate-crashed a D-list gala wearing a borrowed dress that did not fit. She snapped at an assistant. She competed for camera time with the host. She demanded a title that photographers refused to use. And she successfully distracted the entire world from asking what she was doing on a yacht with Karina Shuliak in August of 2016. For now, the distraction worked. The pink dress dominated. The real questions disappeared. But this story is not over. The documents keep coming, the connections keep emerging, and sooner or later, someone is going to ask Meghan Markle to explain herself. Sound off in the comments, and if this is your first time here, subscribe. You will want to be here for what is coming.